Conscious Parenting Summit: How to Confidently Step into Parenting from Conception through Birth and Beyond, Learning to Trust That Inner Guidance of Love. I'm your host, Quinne Brown Huffman, DOULA Quinne. And the mission of the summit is to support aspiring parents, pregnant parents, and those parents lost in the overwhelm of the responsibility. Okay, let's dive in. I'm so excited because today Pam England is joining this conversation. Someone that changed my doula journey, and beyond that, gave me such insight into my own mothering self. Okay, so she, through her observations and experiences as a nurse, midwife, and mother who birthed once by cesarean and once at home, she realized the need for a radically new model of childbirth preparation and a birth story process. She is the author of Birthing from Within, a book that should be on your shelves, Labyrinth of Birth, and her newest book, Ancient Map of Modern Birth, which she released in 2017. Pam England founded the organization Birthing from Within in the year 2000 to offer childbirth mentor and doula training and certification. And she also founded Birth Story Listening, a distance learning course. And Pam lives in Albuquerque. And over the past 19 years, she has connected with countless parents and birth professionals around the US and the world. Pam, it is a pleasure to have you here with me today. I was beyond excited when you said you'd join this conversation. I did your birth art course, and it has only enlightened my process as a birth mentor and doula, and I am just so excited to talk with you. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, shall we dive in? Okay, so this is the tough question which is what the summit is called, conscious parenting. And it's such a vast concept, and I don't know if any of us really know what that even means. Do you have an opinion about what that might mean? What's your insight there?
Yeah, well, when you first mentioned conscious parenting, it began an inquiry for me. What does that mean? What is conscious parenting? And it brought up my first thought was uh, if I put that idea parallel to childbirth and my work as a birth story mentor, my first concern with the phrase would be that so many people come to see me, mostly mothers, because they wanted to birth consciously, or they wanted to be present to their baby when the baby was born. But people fail to mention that the journey of labor itself puts you into a trance that's physiological and sacred. It allows it to be a rite of passage and allows for surrender, but it also gets in the way of conscious as we think of it. Maybe conscious thinking, intentional, uh, being present in an alert, intentional way. And so that feeling of I failed to be conscious in my birth because I had medications or I was out of it leads them to feeling that they failed their babies and themselves. So when I think of conscious parenting, my first thought is, what does that mean? And as a parent, there's enough judgment coming from within, especially in this culture now with hypervigilance towards perfection. Um, and so I'm in a state of inquiry right now with you, wondering like what does that mean? And since parenting is such a long-term relationship, so many days and years and many other experiences inside and outside, evolving all around it, uh, it, that state of consciousness to be sustained also has to be considered. What does that mean?
Yeah.
So the first thing I would think about um, is to make sure that the even the word intention is a problem for me. To arrive into a relationship without intention, to be in a state of not knowing, and receptivity, and reading the moment, and reading where it is for you in that moment, because we're always in a state of evolution. Seems to me better than coming with an intention and trying to put it into the situation, into the relationship. And when a relationship doesn't respond back, then there's an immediate, we become, of course, it just happens, we're judging ourselves for feeling. So I think conscious parenting or conscious living would be to it's really hard to share this because I know intention is something like current, contemporary culture really value. So in using the words that I use, I speak in archetypes. I speak about archetypes a lot. So this brings me to avoid coming to this from the judge archetype. I think, and I speak about this, it's quite easy to use, but to come into conscious parenting from the love warrior. And the love warrior is an archetype that arises in the spirit of doing what needs to be done next and not being unconstructed. And that's what I'm talking about. You arrive and you say, what does this moment mean? Not what do the books say, what did my mother say, what did the class I just take say. There's no shoulds about it. And what this moment means might be something out of the box, something, it could be your one forbidden moment. Um, saying no to your kid, or even showing annoyance so the kid gets some real feedback instead of trying to be perfect and processing all the time and stuff like that. So what does this moment need? And nothing extra, including judging yourself after the fact that you thought that whatever that wasn't enough. And it means coming to the moment knowing that you're evolving and your family's evolving. And a relationship. It's a relationship that is the most dynamic relationship you can be. But conscious parenting as a love warrior would also mean that you're not only focusing on what does the child need to avoid. People are very concerned about long-term emotional trauma. It's impossible to parent without the child having some kind of a orphan activated or some once I made a birthday party for my kid that I thought was absolutely fabulous, and my child gave me for it because it was not doing what should have happened, and it was like, how did that happen? But it's just because people are dreaming differently. If you do something with a positive intention and the child is doing your own experience of it, and it doesn't mean you did it wrong and you failed, it's just that people are doing differently every moment. And sometimes it meshes in and it looks like you're doing it right, but it's just that people are doing it the same. So, um, as a love warrior, there's no buddy here left to judge what you just did, because the love warrior lives in the present moment.
Yeah.
And then this moment moves into the next moment, so the question returns. Now what does this moment mean? Yeah. And then it evolves, and you have to reassess what does this moment mean. And this is a lifelong practice. Oh. But it comes from self-love and self-acceptance, because you're not trying to achieve it. But therefore, you're not trying to achieve anything, you can't judge whether or not you achieve it. Sure.
That's so powerful. That's so powerful. I got goosebumps. So when I'm just taking it all in, because focusing on what just needs to be done next and being present, that is such a key for me. I remember I went through my first pregnancy and birth with such sort of knowing and understanding, because I'm a metamorphosis practitioner, of this, the importance and the juiciness of this experience. And the birth was exactly what you said. It was this initiation, and the labor land took me into another realm, and I came out absolutely overwhelmed and also empowered and felt really amazing for the first while. And then, as the hormones and everything started to settle, I had to sort of come out of, and this is what I want to speak into next, because I feel like you just went there, and I love the archetypes because the love warrior speaks right into it, and you tell the story of Inanna like few other people. The first time I heard the story of Inanna was from Nicole Morales, a midwife in San Diego, who I sat around a fire story with. And I was just about 2 years into motherhood and really shaken up. Like, I was in that labyrinth. And when she explained the labyrinth to me, which is also part of your work, that just absolutely changed how I then moved forward once I understood it. Because I realized where I was in the labyrinth, and that I hadn't come out yet, and that I didn't realize all the things that I had to drop in order to enter this motherland and to this new sense of identity and worth that we carry. And so that's the archetypes and the birth story work, and that you do, that is so incredibly powerful. Sure, I mean, in order to unveil all that unconscious stories that we carry with us, even from young, from when we are children, and hear our first birth story. I know you speak about that. So let's dive into that and talk to me about that work that you do and how it unveils the unconscious story we hold so that we can be more present. If we change the word conscious to just being more present, for me, they kind of go hand in hand. And I think that's what um, my intention would be, is like, how can we be more present as parents?
Yeah. Well, the first birth story came to me rather than from me. I was at a workshop um, in Austin, Texas, and I was looking down at a woman's drawing who had just done birth art, and all of a sudden I started to think about her drawing. And by the way, it was an archetype type of drawing that you see in birth art all the time, of a woman lying on a kind of a stick figure, scared stick figure lying on a stick figure table, if you will. So it's very archetypal, and you see it all the time. So there's nothing striking about it in that way. But for some reason, I looked at her and I started asking questions, and her answers were stunning to me. And I started asking everyone these questions, and then I asked myself these questions, and I realized I had just accidentally discovered the first birth story. And this becomes a very powerful tool for us. And it goes like this. I'm wondering if I should, I'm going to take a moment out here to ask if I should actually do it with you so that people can experience what it is, or should I just describe it?
Ooh, I think it would be wonderful to do it. I think the experience is so much more powerful.
Yeah, I think so too. So now I have to. So it goes like this. When you were very little, there was a time you had no consciousness, no thought about how babies were born, or where people came from. Everybody just was here in your world. And then at some point, maybe 5 years old, 6, 7, 8, the idea that babies get born, and I got born from my mother, and um, birth happens in a certain place, and birth has me. All of this, it comes into consciousness either by seeing some cat born in a cat giving birth in a closet, or by overhearing your mother tell a birth story or something on television. Somehow the idea comes into us for the first time. about the rules and that work in our culture. But we're so little, there's no context for it, and yet it leaves a lasting mental image. And because kids at that age, between mostly 7 and 8, are rule makers. They're making rules for when they grow up. I'm going to do this. I'm never going to do that. The first birth plan coincides with the first birth stories that we hear. Only nobody knows it's going on in the dreaming mind of the child. Not even the child realizes.
Yeah.
And then it becomes dormant until later. And it is one of the things that influences why someone chooses hypnobirthing over um, no childbirth classes and going immediately to listing an epidural. So that decision to do that is often made way back unconsciously, and it's driving them. So when we think of conscious birth, the truth is that most of our lives, the decisions we make, particularly around something like birth, are made unconsciously. It's driven by unconscious memory, unconscious agreement, and something related to birth, but not necessarily directly about it. Like a rule, for example, that um, is unladylike to make noise. And so unconsciously, that comes up in the middle of later where you didn't think it would, it prepares you to not make noise, but unconsciously that rule surfaces, and then you feel inhibited, and then you have that drill so that you don't make noise, but you don't make that connection. Those connections are not made. It looks like it's because of something else. And it's probably because of a number of things. I mean, nothing's ever singular, of course. But you get my idea that this might be something. That's why childbirth preparation, preparation for parenting is always drawn excavation. Because we're excavating. We're not trying to acquire more and more information. We're trying to excavate what's already in there and how it's going to come into play. So the first birth story is one of the things that someone can do uh, to just find out a little bit more about what makes me think this way, or what makes me want something, and what makes something else the first to me. So it goes like this. So when you were pretty little, 5, 6 years old, 7 maybe, um, you can think back and just relax into it. There was a time you knew nothing about birth, and then suddenly you have the first question about from where do babies come, or why did they cut you out of me, mommy, or cats are born. It could be any number. It could be the nativity if you were raised Catholic. There's a powerful acting out of that story every year. So think back to what was one of your earliest impressions of birth, and how old were you when you experienced?
Hmm. So as you speak, the first thing that comes to my mind or that I remember is I was 8 when my brother was born. And we had gone through a big move from houses before my mom became pregnant. And so I was around 6, 7. And of course, she falls pregnant. And I don't remember exact or very clearly. My memories from my childhood is very vague. But I remember, at some point, the story of my birth, how I was born, became a story. And it was a story of induction, of high blood pressure, of my dad having to rush back to the hospital, of lots of stress factors. And I came out and I almost died. And there was all these, like, this was the story. And the first birth story I remember hearing was how I was born from my mom's experience. Um, yes, which
Now, was she telling you the story, or was she telling someone else the story and you were overhearing?
I cannot remember very clearly, but I feel like she might have been telling the family as we all asked and as she felt pregnant with my brother. I can only assume. my memories are, it's an interesting part of me that my childhood is so vague.
Yeah.
You know.
But that's that's quite a lot that you could remember these snippets. So as you let yourself drop in there and drop into your um, 7, 8-year-old self, and even if you can't remember it, imagine, let yourself imagine what it felt like, it felt story, and describe one of your images of that story, since there are many parts to it. One of the images that is vivid that you haven't thought about for a long time, but when you think of it, you see it from the eyes of a 7 year.
I remember, uh, sure, and um, I don't know, the visual of a closet, uh, and my mom with a screaming baby in arms, and yes, so I feel like the story might form in my 7 year old because that was one of her anecdotes was to say, I just didn't know. I just thought, this is not a doll anymore. I can't just put it in a cupboard and be done playing it. This is a live baby. And so for some reason I think there's this open closet that came to my mind, and in my imagination, and it's sort of a whew, yeah, it's a feeling of tightening over here.
And when you were 7, 8, just drop back down and imagine a 7, 8-year-old self or language, a very simple assumption you made about becoming a mother and about a baby. And into that.
Hmm. Yes. So just a lot of fear. A lot of this is a scary thing. Like this responsibility, I guess. I have to take care of you, little baby.
And let yourself go to that agreement with all kids make. Not a blow up, a gun up, I never let yourself be very spontaneous with the agreement like.
The agreement that I made with myself then. Yes, I was not gonna have my own children. I was not gonna do it.
You scared?
Hmm. Yeah. I for a long time
How
said
about
no.
how about your agreement about finish this one? Was there an agreement? Felt agreement? Mothers have to or mothers should. Very young thinking, absolute rigid mothers.
Mothers should. Mothers should know. Mothers should know.
Yeah. And so, and here you are, interestingly enough, later in your life, making videos about conscious parenting, which is interesting. But that's almost like a call from the down mom when you were a very small child, or telling your that this is not one of your what you were fulfilling.
Wow.
It was like the curtain moved when you were little, and it made way for someday I'm gonna have to let them fly. Here you are.
No wonder this feels so big, Pam.
And very important
Sure.
because it was seeded in you as a life purpose. It wasn't something you may have thought of this idea last year, but really you thought of it when you were 7 or 8, when you didn't. Not in adult terms. I want to ask you one more question. That was a very heavy medical story you heard at the age of 7. And you loved your mama, and you didn't want to hear her be in pain, have medical things done to her. Of course, you didn't know what all those words meant. Go back into that just a minute. And imagine, imagine what you could have felt during that overwhelming how babies are born story of a young girl who already knew someday you might have a baby. It's just something you sort of know. So what's that impression of you?
It's almost as if I carry some fault. I caused some pain, and the amount of stress my coming into the world caused. So there's that. Is this my? Was it my fault? That
Yeah,
yeah.
very good. Very good. Now stay there for a moment. I'm going to feel through this together. I'm going to receive that. Just hold it for a moment. So you'll have to drop into your very young 7, 8-year-old self and try not to come to this as you're young. So hearing that your birth caused your mother such a struggle, I don't know if I want to say the right words with it, maybe suffering or difficulty. Did you make an agreement? Do you feel an agreement with me about who you are as a daughter or what you should be as a daughter?
The agreement would be, I just don't want you to worry about me. I don't want to be a worry for you.
Now, just take that agreement, which is something you maybe didn't think of subconsciously as related to you coming into the world. But notice how that mind influenced or shaped your relationship with your mom and your behavior even to this day, or to other people who are mother-like figures. You're smiling and you're making a connection.
So this is so deep. Wow. Whew. It's absolutely I put myself into this caretaker space and making things okay when maybe in moments or in times it's not really okay. I'm not really okay, but I'm not gonna ever give that up. I'm not gonna say that I'm not okay necessarily. I think my mom will concur on that. But I tend to just like I'm good. I got me. I've got this figured out. Everybody, don't worry.
Well, that's very good. Now, so when you think about, so you take this first birth story into the way you prepared to giving birth, or maybe how you inadvertently, unwittingly act as a doula. I mean, sometimes it's very subtle because you just have to sort of sit with it and receive the association with it. But it's not that this, not necessarily that because your mother told the story, now you're messed up. It's more like you made an agreement.
Yeah.
Not it's because you made an agreement. It's
Yeah.
But that's what all humans do. And then we act on our agreements. Now, here's where it becomes conscious. That was unconscious. So on a heroic journey, that's called the unconscious preparation. For the people
Yeah.
talk about preparation for the heroic journey, and there's two phases to that preparation. One is unconscious, like what we're just talking about. You had no idea what you were thinking. You were a little kid, and then you kept living it out until that agreement became pretty polished. And now it's becoming conscious through this process, or other kinds of processes that you also do. Well, once it becomes conscious as an adult, then it's like it's in the light, and you go, oh, and there's a window of opportunity to say, I can change that agreement and make a new agreement before I go into this. To make a new agreement, it's not that easy. By the way, it is like you write an agreement on a refrigerator, and now it's over. You switch. What you then have to do is, in many opportunities in your day, in your life, make it like a dedication to live the new agreement. Because it's not through having a mental understanding of an old agreement versus a possible new agreement. It's by living, you lived that old agreement. That's how it got polished. It wasn't because you thought it or you didn't even think about it consciously after that. You
No.
just lived it.
Yeah.
Right. So in order to change it, you have to live the new agreement. And that takes some dedication. Like you have to become a real curiosity for you. Who would I be if I changed that agreement? So I'm going to ask you a question and see if anything comes through you. If you could change that agreement right now, of course, you may or may not be able to at this moment. So give yourself just to see what comes through. What, as an adult who's more evolved, who has bigger understanding of how the birth story really went, how it wasn't your fault that your mom had a hard birth, and you have all of these new understandings you couldn't possibly have as a little kid. Um, what would you like to, when you think about your mom's birth, by the way, you have to link it to that, not to everything else in your life has to be linked to that first memory. What would you like to now say when I think back on how my mom gave birth? What did my mom do? Which you an assumption that your mom had a hard birth.
So I just want to clarify, I'm going to sort of look at that and look at my assumption and see what I would say now from my adult point of view.
What you
Okay.
would like to be saying now.
What I would
What,
like to be saying if I put myself back there.
um, well, you can't put yourself back there because you're seven and now just to be really clear, that was a really good question actually. Your 7 and 8 year old was dreaming the world as a 7 and 8 year old. So your 7 and 8 year old did it perfectly because that was a amount of understanding you had about the world at that time. So let's leave that imperfection in the past.
Okay.
But now, here's the thing. This is where that's the unconscious agreement. So it's there in your unconscious, and it's always going to be a little thing for you to work with. By the way, I have
Yeah.
my old things which are kind of like popcorn. They just keep coming up, and then so. But in this moment, there is a possibility you could say, well, as of now, as a more evolved adult with understanding of the world and birth and everything, when I think about that story now, I would tell myself, what would you tell yourself
Oh,
about
okay.
yourself? Not about your mom, but about yourself.
Sure. Oh, hmm.
So even though my mom had a hard birth, I am not.
I want to say, even though my mom's story became such a impetus in my life, I changed an agreement with myself, and I'm I want to say that I'm almost proud of myself for how I chose to then allow birth to happen to me and the choices that I made in that. And now I understand why I was so uh, I was so hard-headed about it. I was so absolute about it. I understand it, and I have a sense of pride, but also it's more just, okay, now I understand why it was such a big deal for me to not give my power into the authority that wanted to induce me. Because the big thing that stuck in my head was the induction that my mom went through and what that caused. And then when they wanted to induce me, I just said, no, it's not happening.
So you made
um,
so that was a deep-seated agreement that that was what caused you. That's what stuck you. Without really understanding birds, you knew that that induction was the seed of what everything else that happened in your life. Okay, so this is really powerful. But there's something. I'm going to throw into one more thing. Yeah, yeah. So this allowed you to this agreement, this very simple agreement as a child, gave you the it informed you. Not so much what's in the book informed you, although I'm sure that on some level that reinforced even deeper than that what was in the book. Something even deeper than that knew, no, I'm not going to do that um, because it's almost without words, because I remember.
yeah,
So who is the you? Who is the I that knows that? This is the really spiritual part of the practice.
yeah.
Uh, who is the knower? I am one. How did you know to do that?
How did I know? How did I know?
That's what, and that empty, and it might not be something you can consciously name, but it takes you into this level of inquiry takes you into the place that makes you a bird, the spiritual rite of passage. It's the not knowing. It's the love warrior knowing, doing what needed to be done next, without being attached to outcome, because it might not have worked out well. It didn't matter at the time. Your conviction sailed you through. So there was a what? From where does that come in a person? It doesn't come from here.
No, it's definitely not from here. It's not.
No.
It's
And that's
such a deep
probably good is
feeling.
that people think it came from their minds and their written birth plans, but it comes from something before that. And that's what we need to touch more into. The
Yeah,
sacred, which is undefinable, unnameable, unknowable. It brings us to humility
it does. It does.
and gratitude and a mystery. That's the mystery of birth. But it has some influence from what we've lived, you know. But it has something. But there could have been 100 kids hearing that same story. There'd be 100 different dreams with it, 100 different agreements, and 100 different uh, future birth plans based on how that person, how that kid heard it. And that's all based on dreaming, which has nothing to do with informed mind or where you think it. It's
Yeah.
something really quite lovely, isn't it?
It's an amazing. Do you know? I love how it makes nothing wrong and nothing right. It is all just absolutely perspective in the moment and following, like you said, just what is the next step. And you've just brought me so much, just thank you, first of all, but I'm so moved. And it's not just that part, because even then, as I move through my, sorry for my dogs, as I move through my parenting, I went through a very, very difficult spot as a mother where I awakened into the boundaries I needed to set. And I spoke to about this in another interview, but it was a really interesting space. And when you go back to the forgiving space of doing the best I can in the moment. And the other important thing I heard you say was dropping intention, dropping the need to have something be a certain way and allowing it to be what it needs to be, and trusting our children that they also have autonomy in that relationship, frees us up. But sure, that was very powerful, Pam. Thank you. I am. I have so much to contemplate and to just absorb right now. Thank you so much. Wow. Okay.
So if it was going to be an intention, it would be like Don Miguel Ruiz talks about Mr. Master Self-Love
Yes.
above all.
Yes.
And we stumble along the way
Yes.
because um, the old agreements that we're not worthy and that we have to try harder or it's our fault or we should be seen and not heard and all kinds of agreements. All of those are unconscious and we have no control because you know what activates the unconscious to bring those things up? Isn't the mind, it's the environment. Something in the environment triggers the unconscious to produce an old agreement or a memory and then we're so we have to be in a state of self-love because we cannot control that. And
Self
that's why
love.
that's the one intention that may will guide us through um, and eventually change our patterns. But if we don't change our patterns, let's talk about that for just a moment.
Mm.
So suppose I change your patterns. I have patterns that really can't seem to be, I can change them intermittently, but not consistently. I have to be completely like, I was made this way. And I'm doing my best. But I'm not wrong for being made this way. This is my quirk. And I'm suffering, and other people are too, but it sounds like I'm doing it on purpose. And to really have the self-talk of, I don't have to fix this to become lovable. I'm already lovable with this quirk.
Yes. Yes.
I'm already lovable as a parent who does this funny thing and wishes I could be like that parent, but wasn't made that way. It was made this way. So that's kind of what we're talking about here, which is conscious parenting, conscious living.
Yeah. Bring it back to self love. Yeah. I think that's at the core of any inquiry is to learn to listen again to the voice that brings you that consciousness, that brings you that calling, that understands your who we are and that lives. It's something that we can hear if we choose to inquire deep enough, and that's the work you offer, and the rituals and the practices that brings us to understand the initiation even of birth and of different parts of motherhood. Because I always say labor and birth never really ends in life. It's ever present. We're constantly coming up with ideas and concepts and falling pregnant with things and having to go through labor and birthing and living with it. And so it just is an endless process. And that's the expansion and experience of life. And I love it. I love it. I love it. It makes sense to me. It's how I can move forward. So I think that was so powerful, and you gave everyone such a beautiful taste and through me an experience of the work you do. And let me tell you, everybody, it is it is beautifully powerful, and I am only grateful for this experience. So I want one more question that I want to put out there that I like to ask. So Pam, if you could give a newborn a welcome gift in words, what would you say to that little newborn in the world?
Well, I would say, you come to the right place at the right time to fulfill your destiny.
Yeah. Please hear that little baby because that's the truth. I agree with you. Thank you. Pam, do you want to tell everybody about the free or the your offering that they can click on and go and visit you with?
Yes. Um, and there's going to be a video of me leading you. through this process, uh, that I just led Quinn through the first verse story. So I'll try to pace it so that you can listen to my voice and go through your own experience and come to your own insight.
That is one amazing gift. Make sure you click and follow through and take action for your own inquiry back to self love and being present with your babies and with life because it's juicy and it just that's where it feels good. Thank you for joining us today on the Conscious Parenting
Yes, well,
Summit.
thank you.
Thank you. Mm.